All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our Know Your Rights or GSA Advocacy session. We'll move right into it then. Oh, I can't push that. All right, so just a little bit of an introduction of who you're seeing on the screen right now. My name is Ashley, and I am the GSA Student Wellness Coordinator. If you have any questions after this session, you can reach out directly if you want to me to gsa-wellness@uwaterloo.ca. And Cindy, you can introduce yourself if you like.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy Young. I am the GSA's Vice President of Administration. My contact information is right there. And under my umbrella includes student wellness. Happy to have Ashley on our team, actually.
And thank you, Cindy. And for those in our session today, if you're looking to ask questions, you can post them at any point in our Q&A or chat box at the bottom, and then Cindy will be letting me know all the questions at the end of the session. All right, so jumping into a bit of the GSA advocacy and what we do when students have concerns and they reach out to us. So basically, if you have a concern, you can have confidential advising appointments with us. Usually, depending on the scenario, you will usually have a one-on-one appointment with myself or one of the vice presidents or the president, but usually that first appointment is going to go through me. And so you can access this at any time as long as you've paid your student fees. So if you would like to book an appointment, you can do so by contacting GSA office at uwaterloo.ca or GSA-wellness at uwaterloo.ca to contact me, and then we can set up an appointment. At this time, because a lot of people are not on campus, all of these appointments are virtual or via phone if you have a Canadian phone number. But yeah, all grad students can access this service. So students can contact us about a large variety of issues you may be facing. So, I mean, the professor doesn't have to punch you in the face for you to contact us with an issue. If you're having any sort of supervisor conflict or course instructor conflicts, or you're facing discrimination, or there's something going on with your TA payment or your RA payment and something's wrong and you're not getting the money that you should be receiving from the school, you can reach out to us for that. Or if you have an issue, let's say with a course grade or how your paper was marked in a course and you need some help trying to figure out how one goes about, filing a petition or a grievance and filing those kind of complaint processes, you can contact us and we can help you by either figuring out how to move forward in filing those things and letting you know what the process is, or also letting you know about other resources that are available on campus that you might not be aware of that can also aid. So, like I just mentioned, we can help you with navigating policies and information on resources on campus. So I don't know if you have checked out the list of policies we have at UW, but there are a lot of them. Even myself in this role, I still need a refresher once in a while to know the logistics of what's going on with these policies, because it's difficult to keep track, especially when they are constantly evolving and changing with the climate at UW. So if you need help kind of figuring out where those policies stand and what the language is regarding in those policies, you can reach out to us and we can help you kind of understand those policies. In addition to those appointments, with your permission, the GSA can also advocate directly on your behalf. So usually something like this might take into discussions, let's say, with the president or Cindy in her vice president role with members of the GSPA. So this would only occur if, let's say, you come and you have an appointment with me and we figure out that this is an issue that would probably have to have some input from other stakeholders on campus. I would say, hey, like, are you comfortable with me sharing your scenario with the president so that he can move forward and talk with the GSPA about it? And so at that point, you'd either say, oh yeah, you can do that, or if you don't want me to do that, that's completely fine as well. And then we just move forward from there. And also another note is the GSA, for the entire graduate student body, it's not just one-on-one appointments that we have. We also are doing a lot of advocacy, which involves like ongoing discussions with university and government bodies to increase and improve the supports available to students. All right, so this session is going to be focused around two major policies, which is policy 33, which is surrounded around ethical behavior. And then we will also be covering policy 30, which is around graduate student employment. So for ethical behavior, basically this policy is surrounded on the basis of the idea that the university community must be just and respectful. You know, people, whether you be a staff member or a faculty member or a student or any other member that's at the University of Waterloo, you can't just go around and be disrespectful to other people. And so this policy helps keep that in place and allows for avenues for students or staff or faculty that may be experiencing issues with this, as well as outlines some repercussions, it points you to a different policy that outlines repercussions of what could happen if there is a violation of this policy. So another base is that no member can interfere with the work or study environment of another, including off campus. Especially the including off-campus part is especially prominent right now, considering that a lot of us are not on campus right now. So let's say if you have someone reaching out to you with an inappropriate comment via email, or you run into a professor, I don't know, in Cambridge or downtown Kitchener, and they make an inappropriate comment towards you, that is something that you can make a complaint about at the university, even if it took place outside of the university setting. So it's meant to protect all university members from discrimination, harassment, and poisoned work environments. So just to give a little bit of an idea of what the different terms mean, because in some of the terms with discrimination and sexual harassment and poison environment, workplace harassment, some of them are very similar to each other. Some of them involve slightly different definitions or different contexts. So just to give a general idea, discrimination is, you know, if you're being treated differently because of your age, race, sexual orientation, or something like that that's outlined in the Human Rights Code. Or general harassment, which is, you know, unwelcome comments. Let's say you're walking down the hall and for some reason a professor makes like a rude comment towards you that is just uncalled for. That could be considered under that. Sexual harassment, so unwelcome sexual comments or advances that become part of the work or study environment. The poisoned environment is anything that's unsupportive or disrespectful comments or actions. So for example, if you're taking a course and a student or a professor turns around to you and says, you know what, you're stupid for thinking that way. That's not respectful, and that obviously that is not supportive, and that's not tolerated in our university community. So that would be counted under that. And then workplace harassment and unwelcome comments or actions against an individual in the workplace. So especially if you're working as a TA or an RA or anything in that nature on campus. So ethical behavior and who you can talk to if policy has been violated. So there are tons of different offices and different people that you can approach if you have an issue that's kind of related to the ethical behavior policy. Who you may want to approach first, it really depends on, you know, the context of the issue and who's involved and who you feel comfortable approaching. You know, if you're trying to figure out if you want to, let's say, file a complaint under the ethical behavior policy, perhaps you maybe want to reach out to us at the Graduate Student Association. Or let's say you are punched in the face on campus. Perhaps that is a scenario where you'd want to reach out to UW Police Services first. So it really depends, but some of the options you have are reaching out to your supervisor or course instructor. You can reach out to your department graduate coordinator or your department chair or the dean or your associate dean, the associate provost, the Graduate Student Association, like I just mentioned, which is us, the Office of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs, UW Police Services, Accessibility Services, Human Rights, Equity, and Inclusion Office, and Counseling Services. So a lot of these services are not physically on campus right now, depending on the office, but they're still very much accessible if you reach out to them via email. And if you need help figuring out how to contact any of these offices or who to get in touch with, you can also contact us at the GSA, and we'll provide you with that information as well if you need help. So my biggest tip for policy 33 for this ethical behavior is to keep a timeline of events and documents surrounding an issue. This is especially important. If it's something that is ongoing, like if you're, let's say, for example, you're experiencing something with another student or a professor, and they are constantly making certain comments towards you or inappropriate actions, my tip would be to keep some sort of proof and document every time that this happens, whether it be in the emails being sent to you or comments on a graded paper, anything like that. And the reason I say that is if you choose to file a complaint under policy 33 to your associate dean, the formal process here would be that they would get you to fill out a form, and in the form it involves you pretty much writing an essay of outlining exactly what happened, and oftentimes you'll be asked to provide documentation kind of proving that that did occur. So having anything that backs your case is really going to hopefully make sure that your case moves forward and is found that the ethical behavior violation did in fact take place. All right, so we're going to move a bit into the information that we have here on being a graduate student TA. So teaching assistants, otherwise known as TAs, are positions held by qualified students to assist a faculty member with instructional responsibilities. Not for all students, but typically TA-ships or RA-ships, which is research assistantships, are usually roped into your funding package and contracts when you're signing to go, accepting your offer to go to UW. It's a way to earn some money and get some teaching experience, and hopefully for everyone, the ideal is that it's a positive experience, but unfortunately it's not for everyone. So that's why we have some policies in place to protect TAs. So TAs are arranged by your academic department and paid through human resources. I believe the system is now through it's through human resources, but you'll get paid through a system called a Workday. So if you need help figuring out how to see your pay slips or anything involved with that, you can contact human resources with questions about Workday and whether or not you're seeing your position show up in Workday, or if there's something wrong with your pay slip. I would recommend contacting them. And again, if you need help figuring out who to contact for issues like that, you can always reach out to us at the GSA and we will point you in that direction. So university offices that support TAs. So we have accessibility services. So keep in mind, even if you're a student and you require, let's say, accommodations for taking a course, you can also get accommodations for the environment as a teaching assistant. So if you would like to look into something like that, you can contact accessibility services. You can also look into the Center for Teaching Excellence. They run a variety of workshops, which is really useful, and they have certificate programs you can actually get, like the fundamentals of university teaching. So it's a cool line for your CV, and it gives you a bit of experience in that area. You can contact Conflict Management and Human Rights Office or Counseling Services, the English Language Studies, Office of Academic Integrity, Occupational Health. So let's say for some reason the person that you're working for as a TA is making you do something that is super unsafe for you, then you can talk to that office, especially to figure out what's going on there and how to remedy that so that you are safe in the workplace. You can reach out to the Student Success Office, Waterloo Learn Help, Writing and Communication Center, and you can contact us at the GSA as well. So there's a lot of policies that kind of are not directly on graduate student TAs, but cover employees or students in general, and all of these are really going to apply to you as a graduate student TA. So for some examples of this is policy 30, employment of graduate student TAs, which we were just talking about. Policy 33, ethical behavior, that counts what we were just talking about. Let's say if, an inappropriate or comment is made to you or advances, even if it's from a student to you, you can go through policy 33 here for that. Policy 34 with health, safety, and environment. So kind of like what we were just talking about, the occupational health and safety. Policy 46 with the information management, which I believe is how it outlines how they go about keeping documents on your employment and staff and student information. So for example, like an office can't just send out your personal identification and contact information to anyone in the student community or personal information like that. Like there are policies in place to protect that kind of information. Policy 58 on accessibility, like we were just mentioning. We have a policy on conflict of interest. So let's say if you are assigned to TA for a professor, except just as an example, let's say that you're related to the professor, or for some reason you have a bad history with the professor because you had a conflict with them in a different course or anything like that, it would fall under there. I believe what also falls under this policy is if you have a conflict of interest with a student. So for example, if you know a student in a class or something along those lines, I believe it would be covered under here. Policy 70, it covers student petitions and grievances, and policy 71 is student discipline. Policy 72 is student appeals. All three of those, I believe, is going to be covered at our next session, so keep tuned for that if you want to learn a bit more in depth about that. And policy 73 covers intellectual property rights, so authorship or patents or anything along those lines, and the copyright at the University of Waterloo as well. So policy 30 specifically with the employment of graduate TAs, just a few points to know is all TA policies at UW must adhere to the Employment Standards Act, Human Rights Code, the Pay Equity Act, Occupational Health and Safety Act, the Statute Labor Act, the University of Waterloo Act, and the Workplace Safety and Insurance Act. For example, for the Pay Equity Act, you can't be in a position where you're getting paid $5 an hour and someone else is getting paid $40 an hour. That's totally not acceptable, and that is something that UW has to adhere to under the Pay Equity Act in Canada. The next point would be that graduate students employed as TAs are paid in an hourly rate, which is set annually by the Provost with advice from the Graduate Student Support Advisory Committee. So our rate that we get paid as TAs it fluctuates depending on the year. It's been going up every year or every other year. It depends on what's happening and what the cost of living is. Another thing is a maximum of 160 hours over the course of a term. So really, if you are working more than 10 hours a week in your TA role, mostly you shouldn't be. Because if a professor is making you work 20 hours a week and you're going well above this 160 hours, there's a good chance you're not getting paid for that. And that's something that you should consider reaching out to your department or one of the services that I listed about. So time spent in your TA-ship includes a background preparation work. So let's say if you have to get a bit more familiar in a course, so it involves, reading parts of the textbook, it involves answering student emails, marking papers and tests and all that stuff. But there is a limits to what you can be doing in the TA. So, if your professor is asking that you're working for is asking you, hey, because you're my TA, can you come walk my dog in Kitchener? No, you don't have to do that. That's not part of that's not your job. You're a teaching assistant at UW. So if it doesn't sound like it should be something that is part of your tasks in the role in the course that you're assigned to, then there's a good chance that you probably don't have to do it, and you should probably reach out to someone and see kind of what the norms are with whatever tasks are being assigned to you if there's something fishy going on. If additional work is offered, like marking or proctoring, graduate students must be paid at the graduate TA hourly rate for the number of hours specified. So for example, sometimes at the end of a term, even if you're reaching the max at your TA hours, sometimes departments will put out a call to TAs saying, hey, you know, we need some TAs to proctor these extra courses. And they will offer to pay you the TA hourly rate for whatever it is, the 3 hours to proctor that exam. It's kind of like an additional small job offer, at least what I've seen happening in the past. So again, for that, they can't just pay you whatever they want. They have to pay you what you would usually be paid as a TA for those extra roles. And they're not mandatory. You don't have to take them. All right, so I believe then we will open the floor to Q&A now.
Thank you, Ashley, for that really comprehensive and helpful presentation. The Q&A is now open, so please enter in your questions. I'll just wait a bit for that. And let's see what pops up. So I have a question for you. And it is, if I am uncertain about an issue, should I still set up an advising appointment with you?
That's a good question. I would say the answer is yes. If you are wondering about an issue, there's no harm in reaching out to us and kind of getting a bit more information on the context of what resources could be available to you. So yeah, if you're unsure about an issue and you're thinking you might need some help, definitely reach out to us.
Thanks. And so there's another question also about your confidential advising appointments. They're wondering what the confidential part of these advising appointments mean. I know you touched a little bit about that, but if you can talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. So we use the word confidential because they are not completely anonymous. Obviously, you're talking to me or someone else at the GSA. And so you're aware when we do have a confidential advising appointment, some of your information and what the issue was is summarized into a form. But that form is not shared with everyone at the GSA. It's mostly just for myself for tracking purposes that I am seeing that information. And sometimes, depending on the scenario, it would be, let's say, the president, but only in certain scenarios. The scenarios being if you, let's say, gave me permission to move that issue forward up the chain or to the GSPA or whoever it is, depending on the issue, or if there's a scenario where I've been approached with an issue that I believe that yourself or someone else's life is in jeopardy or someone's safety is in jeopardy, then I am obligated to share that information. But if it's any information that's other than that, then it's not going to be shared with other people unless subpoenaed by a court or something like that. But for the most part, your information is going to be kept private.
Thanks, Ashley. So I have a question here about, so you mentioned a couple of different offices and individuals that you can reach out to. Wondering what the uniqueness of reaching out to GSA would be versus other offices and individuals on campus in the perspective of a grad student.
So from the perspective from a grad student, I would say the biggest advantage to reaching out to the GSA is that not only you're speaking to another student that is kind of, I don't want to say, I can't think of a good word, but I guess on the same wavelength, like you can communicate where your peers essentially. But one of the big things, and the university is working on that because there are groups, but is to kind of avoid a bit of the goose chase. So what I say by that is that sometimes students will get looped into going to a service that they think might be applicable, and then they go to that service and that service is like, well, you know, we kind of don't really deal with this, so you maybe reach out to this service over here, and it's kind of like a service hop. And hopefully the intention of reaching out to the GSA is to at least minimize that kind of wild goose chase around the services. That would be my guess.
Yeah. I'll also add here that as the GSA, we are the sole representatives of graduate students. So we will always be, you know, on your side and helping you through the process. if you need an arbitrator sitting into a meeting or someone to attend, we can also do that as well. And then you have the advising sessions from Ashley.
Right, that is something I forgot to mention, is that if you're having a meeting with the administration, or let's say your department or a faculty member, or if there's an external investigation happening, you can actually have one of us at the GSA sit in on that meeting as a witness for you for the proceedings.
Thanks. Okay, so our next question. So would you be able to walk me through the steps if you feel that your rights have been violated as a graduate TA? I mean, I think this question might be able to take many different routes, but sort of the general process.
Right. Okay. So I think that the general process, like you were saying, it really depends on what the scenario is and what's involved and who's involved. But generally, a student would, from the outset, connect with our GSA office, usually through the contact form. And then that would usually be circulated down to me. And then I would get in direct contact with the student, introduce myself, say why I'm reaching out to the student, and then ask them if they would like to set up an appointment with me. And then we would figure out how we would like to do that versus like Zoom or phone, and then we would set something up. Typically, when a student contacts me with an issue wanting an appointment, depending on their availability, I can usually set that appointment up within the week that I've been contacted, so you shouldn't have to wait weeks to meet with me. And usually it's within a few days that you're able to set up an appointment with me, which is important because sometimes, depending on what the issue is, if you're filing a petition or a grievance, it's time sensitive. So that would be a good thing. And then we have an initial meeting set up, and we kind of walk through, kind of give me like an idea of what the issue is and what has happened so far. And then after I get the information, if it's something that I believe can be really helped in a certain way, like, okay, this is very clear that it would be good for you to file a petition, then at that point, we can either talk about how you would go about filing that and what resources you can access to fill out that form. Or if it's a scenario, sorry, before I go that route, we might even set up an extra appointment at that point, depending on what needs to be done and what needs to be followed up on. You know, if it's a scenario where I believe that I need further guidance on what to do in that scenario, or I believe that someone else would have to be involved to help the scenario, then I would ask you for permission of if I can share your experience with either Cindy in the VP role or our president to get involved with the scenario and help from there. Yeah, but yes, it really depends on the scenario and what the issue is.
Thanks, Ashley. So I'm nearing the end of some of the questions. So there's one more. Wondering if graduate student RAs and sessionals can receive help from any of those offices that you mentioned that support TAs.
Yes, I say that because I think pretty much every single one of those offices that are listed are also there to support staff and faculty as well. And because regardless of if you're an RA or a sessional, because you're a grad student, you also have access to the GSA, regardless of if you're in a research role or a teaching role or anything like that. So yes, you can reach out to, I believe, pretty much all of those offices, even if you are in a RA role versus a TA role.
Great. All right, I think that concludes all our questions, and this is a recorded session, so feel free to reach out to Ashley or myself for any further questions. And Ashley, I'll let you wrap this up.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming out to the session and providing us with valuable questions. And thank you, Cindy, for moderating that. And like Cindy was just mentioning, this will be posted somewhere. So if you want some further information, you can check that out again, or you can contact us at the GSA If you need help figuring out a bit more information on the things that we presented in the slides or some of the resources available, or if you'd like to set up an appointment, you can contact the GSA or contact me directly, whatever you're most comfortable with. And yes, so thank you so much and have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, and wherever you are.